Last week, Pastor Chizu shared with us about God's call for us to go into deeper water like Peter did. Even with doubt, even with fear, stepping out on faith. And, that one hit me hard. I appreciated that message. Today, we're gonna follow Peter as he steps deeper into his path of following Jesus. Let's look at what happened in Matthew 14, verses 22 through 36. If you would read with me. Immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side, while he dismissed the crowd. After he dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. Later that night, he was there alone, and the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them, walking on the lake, walking on water. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and they cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage, it is I, don't be afraid." "Lord, if it's you," Peter replied, "tell me to come to you on the water." "Come," he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came out towards Jesus, walking on water. But when he saw the wind, he's afraid. And beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You have little faith," he said. "Why did you doubt?" And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshiped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." Wow. Think about that. Just think about what just happened right there. Peter stepped out, but then he was overcome with fear. Has anybody here ever felt that? You stepped out, and then you're overcome with fear? Am I the only one? I'm like, okay, all right. I just want to make sure I'm not like, I'm talking to people that are alive right here. I mean, this morning I stepped out of the house and I was overcome with fear that I had the wrong outfit on. You know what I mean? Like, I was overcome with fear that this hairdo was the wrong choice for this cold weather, right? When I read that verse several times, there were several elements of the story that really stick out to me. I think they helped me to like personally identify with Peter. I think, in this whole Lent season, one of the things is we're following Peter along in his life, and there's so many things about Peter that really stick with me. And I'm going to go through some of those elements that we see in this story. Number one, in this story, it literally says they were terrified. And I can identify with being terrified. Peter and the rest of the homies in the boat, in that moment, when they see Jesus, they think, it's a ghost, right? I mean, there was no movies out at that time. There was no computer graphics, right? They were literally out on a boat. The wind was blowing, there was waves going, and all of a sudden, there is a body, a person walking on water. I mean, this is me, y'all. Just this morning, I was standing up there in the sound booth, and I was talking to Cody, and Paul walked by, and I was like visibly startled. Like, I think I'm still a little shaken up. All he did was walk by, but for some reason, I didn't expect it. It's a ghost. No, it was just Paul. But I've been terrified. In my lifetime, I've gone through therapy for many years, and there was one season of my life where me and my former business partner, it wasn't me in therapy or him in therapy, it was our working relationship was in counseling and therapy. It's very interesting. But at the end of those 4 years, the gift that I was given by the counselor was they said, "Aaron, you come from a place of fear. You start from a place of fear." And I'm like, and? Duh. Anybody who knows me knows that I start from fear. But what's crazy is that I learned this lesson, and it's wild. In the Bible, it says that perfect love casts out all fear. And I don't know what that message means to you, but I'll say for me, what it makes me think of is like that science experiment where you're trying to dilute something, and then you just got to pour in so much of something right? The clean water to get all that fear out of there is that you got to pour in love. So if you ever want to look at my tattoo, I'll show you my tattoo. The whole thing came from this actual 4 years of coaching that I went through in counseling. That I have to come from a place of love, not from a place of fear. And I'll tell you, I mean, that's what the tattoo is for. If you ever want to, you want to look at it, I'm washing my hands. The place where I have a compass, and on the north, where you would normally say north, is the Tagalog word for love. It says mahal. And on the south, it says 144, which is how many times the Bible says, do not fear. So that compass is reminding me that I've got to come from a place of love. But I identify with Peter in being terrified. When I'm not healthy, I get stuck there. I stay in fear. I can get, there's these cycles that we come through, and we're going to see Peter go through it. But if we get stuck in one of these steps, it's hard for us to get through in life. I'll say a lot of people that I work with are stuck in one of these steps. Maybe they haven't been able to move through things. Maybe one example for me is when things didn't go the way I planned for them to go, I tend to overthink, and I go to that worst case scenario, and I jump to this fearful response. A simple one that I think we can all identify with is like a friend I haven't been in contact with for a long time. We used to talk all the time. We don't talk now. We haven't seen each other. It's been this long time. They must be mad at me. They must not like me. They must not. And then you bump into them at the grocery store, and it's like nothing ever happened. Has anybody ever been that way? The entire conflict was in my head. There was no conflict ever. I don't know if you guys have ever had that happen before. It happens to me all the time. I have to do work in my own life to move from that default of fear. Because it's like there's a rut in the road, and my tire keeps going back to that rut in the road of fear, right? So I've got to turn the wheel to get back onto the flat road. I get Peter like this. This is the thing that I get Peter in the way that he was terrified. And all the guys in the boat, right? So next, after they saw Jesus, Jesus says, take courage, it is I, don't be afraid. And I know that's like very like old school language, but I get it like, guys, come on, it's me. It's me, I'm here. Hey, I know it's dark, but look at my eyes, it's me. But they're skeptical, right? So they move on to that next phase, which is testing to see if it's God. And if I think about a lot of times I've been in fear and I'm terrified, then I go to this next stage, maybe this is God, right? The second part of the story here is when you test the things to see, well, God, if it's really you, tell me to come out on the water. I'm going to come out on the water, and then I'll know that it's Jesus, right? What if it wasn't? I don't know. Just throw it out there. Like, what if it wasn't? Peter just sinks real quick. You know what I mean? Anybody ever thought about that one? Just me? Okay, that's a fearful response. But I'll say, we get in these situations where we plan to walk out on faith, but we're still maintaining a little bit of fear. We're still kind of holding on to a little bit of that fear, so we test, right? It's a natural response for all of us. So we go from fear to we go to testing, and it could be anything from give me a sign. I'll tell you, my wife and I, when we were dating, and I wanted to ask her to marry me. I had purchased the ring. I was holding on to it. It was in my mom's sock drawer, so nobody would ever find it. Shoot, I let the secret out. I shouldn't. Oh, man. Now she's going to know to check my mom's sock drawer for stuff. But I was waiting, and I was looking for this sign, and I was praying. I was like, God, tell me that this is the right thing to do. This is the right next step. God, tell me. God, tell me. And I got this sign. It's so wild. I don't really know my grandfather. I didn't know my grandfather before he passed. I'd seen him about 5 or 6 times in my life. And there was a check. The day that I was having this like wild thing, I was like, I can't provide for this person. I'm so young. I don't have any money. And that was one of the main hindrances was financial. And there's this check from my grandfather in the mail. And I was like, God, send me a sign. And this check was there. And the mail, before email, there was paper mail. I don't know if you guys know what paper mail is. The snail mail. You put something in an envelope, and then it's okay. So that had been done a week before, right? Because he was far away. And his decision had to have been done, weeks before that, maybe months before that. And they had to be arrangements. And it was all for me, like I could see, like in that moment, that was supposed to happen. The first and only time that actually happened. And it was that sign, but it was that thing of me testing, God, if this is you, make it clear. And God had a plan many weeks before that I was going to ask that on that day and have reassurance right there. So after being in fear and after testing, and we go out and we're finally going out there on God, on God's will for us and God's strength, and get out on the water. The next step that I see in this cycle is something that I've done quite a bit: falling on my face. Falling on my face. We saw that Peter lost focus. So Peter was terrified. Peter got the reassurance. Peter stepped out, and then Peter tripped and fell and just ate it. No hands. I don't know if you guys have ever fallen with no hands. Anybody ever done that? Not even this week. I've fallen. You fall, no hands. I don't know why. Normally your hands go down to protect you, but this is Peter he ate it, right? And I'll tell you, like, I've been in that situation so many times where I'm out there, and then the kids these days would say, I'm feeling myself. I start to really like myself in this situation. I got this all worked out. I've got it handled. And then bam, we lose sight of what we're supposed to be focused on, which in this situation, right, in all situations, is Jesus. Jesus as our example. This is like, to me, this plays out in my daily life all the time. I go through this cycle of terrified, testing. I go out there, and then all of a sudden I'm like, hey, it's all working out. It must be me. I must be amazing, right? Thank you, Glenn. She's with me. Then I trip, and then I smack my mouth on a speed bump on the ground, right? So this is like part of that cycle that happens so many times in our lives, and we see Peter doing it. What happened when Peter saw that wind? He started to sink. He started to get distracted. He forgot. He forgot who he was with. He forgot the main purpose. He forgot the focus, the driving force. I'll tell you a quick story. This happened to me actually when I was called to come here. I used to be, I messed up a lot when I was younger, and I never thought I'd be a pastor again. I thought I was called to be a pastor when I was very young. Then some things happened. You guys know part of that story. But I ended up at a church, and it's a really big church. And I was one of like 9 or 10 pastors over there. And things were going well. Things were going great. And then it just didn't fit right after a while. Anybody ever been in a situation where it just doesn't fit right? And I started to question, like, maybe I'm not supposed to be a pastor. Maybe I'm not supposed to be doing like this thing. And I started to lose focus. I'm not going to lie. I started to feel like I had to climb this like ladder of the pastorhood or whatever that was. I don't know what that was. But in my mind, I thought that I had to like impress these folks and fit into a thing that just wasn't fitting well. Like the puzzle piece, you're like, if I push it down, it works. When I let go, the puzzle piece pops out. And that's how I felt. Like that puzzle piece that just wouldn't fit. And I started to lose focus. I started to lose that idea of purpose of what God had for me. So I started to question what I was doing. Then I met Jake and Chizu and started to see what was happening here. And this was like that perfect puzzle piece that I feel God was making me uncomfortable over there to let me know that this is the actual puzzle that I'm supposed to be a part of. You guys know what I mean with that? And I'll say, if I can go back to that situation, I was starting to fall on my face. Sometimes job performance starts to fail. Interpersonal relationships aren't really working out well. You try to do something, it doesn't go off the way it's supposed to go. You do something you feel is so right, and it just doesn't happen the way that you think it's supposed to happen. Those are those times that I feel like we lose focus. And I mean, I'll even give another example that happened here while I was here. A lot of it has to do in this nonprofit world that we're touching in when we do the shelter work, has to do with long-term funding. I'll tell you, the nonprofit world is a tough place to be. You've got to go through this cycle all the time because there's always this fear, like, what if it shuts down? What if they lock the doors? What if we're on the lock cohort? What if there's all these what ifs? I live in the what if land all the time. And so when I came here, we were supposed to only have like these winter shelters, and then South Haven Parish and here, we both become this year-round shelter, and then money starts to run out in one side, and then money comes in the other side, and it's like all of these things. I'm like, oh man, we got to get this money to keep this thing going. And I'll tell you, every single time, I heard a wise person once say, we can always see God working when we look back. We can always see God working when we look back. I always struggle to see God right here, right now, right? Because I have this desire, I have this expectation. I want things to go the way that I want them to go. I'm like Peter, like, God, let me get out on the water. This is going to be such a cool story. They're going to write stories about us, right? I'm going to jump out on this water, and then I lose the focus, start to sink. And then what happens? What happens is this fourth thing that we see here is that God picks us back up, ... again, right? How many times? The fourth and final way that I identify with Peter in this story is the fact that God picked him up and put him in the boat at the end of the story. I mean, just how many times has God come into my story or your story and picked you back up and put you back in the boat? I mean, we're all here right now. If we went around the room, how many stories will we hear where it would have been impossible for us to be here were it not for God? Some of us may not be on the planet. Some of us may not be in Castro Valley. Some of us may not be in this building. Some of us may not be connected to God in any way, shape, or form if it wasn't for God stepping in and putting us back in the boat again. But like in my life, it's always happened, like it's happened here with Peter. I was afraid. I was petrified and thinking I could never. Nobody else was thinking that? Was it just me? I don't know. It just came to me right now. But now I'm back. No, okay. All right. Thought y'all were going to stand up and start dancing. Cheesy, remember we practiced that? Oh. I was afraid. Then I thought it had worked out. Then I fell on my face because I focused on myself and not on God. And then once I realized that I was failing, I asked God for help. And then God showed up. So what does this all have to do with Lent? I'm going to have the worship team come up. We're going to take a little bit of time and think about this. I'm glad that you guys asked, what does this have to do with Lent? I went and I looked online at the PCUSA website. I'm not sure if you guys have ever checked that out. They got some pretty cool resources. This is what I found that PCUSA says about Lent. Lent is a chance for us to practice every year, focusing on God in Christ. We remember God as immersed in earthly life with our earthly practices. One of the most common Lenten practices is fasting. This can mean giving up certain foods or habits like expensive coffee or cigarettes and donating money to helping others. One of the questions we must ask is, are we practicing the fast God calls for? Is it a fast that reminds us to love God and love neighbors as ourselves? Are we focused on God's work and Jesus' ministry to the poor, the vulnerable, the oppressed, the sick, and the lonely? Are we practicing love, kindness, justice, and mercy? By fasting, we practice denying the self, not just for the heck of it or to drop 10 pounds, but for the purpose of shifting our attention to Jesus. It's a question of vision, of focus. Are our hearts curved in upon themselves, or are our hearts open to God? But Lent is not just about fasting or giving something up. It can be about taking or adding something. For some, Lent can be a time of adopting a new practice. This can mean engaging in walking prayer, Bible study, or some other active habit that trains us in a certain direction and focuses us on Christ. Like the moral of the story with Peter is when we do return and we focus on Christ, God puts us back in the boat again. I'd like to push the envelope a little bit if you guys are game for it. You guys game for it? One more next level? Okay, I got some head nods. Nobody said no way. All right. What do you think? What if, like, in addition to a habit of like giving up something for the 40 days, like giving up chocolate, which is a horrible idea, I'm just saying, but giving up something like that, what if we dug a little bit deeper? What if for the rest of this Lenten season, while we're waiting for the celebration of the death, burial, and resurrection of our living God, we started to fast from some of our habits that no longer serve us spiritually? What if we gave up this whole cycle, this cycle that's on the screen? What if we just gave it up? Follow me for a second. The cycle of being terrified, testing to see if it's really God, falling flat on my face, then God picking me back up. It's this cycle over and over again. What if we work during Lent to break cycles? The cycles where we go through this failure process and then give back to God. One way that I found through the work of my therapist and my sponsor is to have this practice of pausing. It's the pause. There's these nervous systems that we have. One is the sympathetic nervous system, which is that lizard brain where we say, we fight or flight. We're not really thinking, we're just responding. That moment when Paul walked by me earlier, that was my sympathetic nervous system. That was me freaking out. Boom! I went into I don't know what I thought. I didn't think. My body just said, don't get thrown off the balcony onto the floor. I think that's what my body said. Stay on the balcony. That's what my body was doing. That fight or flight, we don't think, we just respond, we react, right? But then the other one is the parasympathetic nervous system, parasympathetic. And that's the part where that's what differentiates us from animals, is we have this ability to think, choose, make decisions. And what I've learned is when I'm triggered, when there's a moment when I'm upset, I'm hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, restless, irritable, or discontent, if I pause and I breathe deeply through my nose, everybody breathe with me, in, hold it for 4 seconds, out. One more time, in, out. Last time, in, out. When I take that pause, I can go from reacting to thinking and deciding. We don't have to go through all of these steps. We can pause. We can breathe. We can calm ourselves. We can reflect on a regular basis, or through an entire season of maybe 40 days where we do these things so that we can just stop the madness, get back to breathing, thinking. Thinking is where we're able to do the hard things and give things back to God. It's not easy. I'll tell you, it's easy to react. Just be in that moment and running around and doing things, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. Pick it up, put it down. Sometimes we got to pause. We got to ask ourselves, do I need to do this thing? Do I really need to be upset right now in this moment? Do I need to say that thing that might hurt that person's feelings? Do I need to go to that thing that's going to provide me momentary comfort and long-term pain? Do I need to take this action that's going to cause pain for myself or for others? And this pause, this evaluation, and moving to a place of thinking and handing things over to God, getting to that fourth step where we hand things back to God. And God picks us up again. I think it's the real purpose of Lent. Rather than just some sort of ritualistic, sacrificial thing. We do this thing so we can say we did it. Let's move to a place where we're thinking and we're choosing and we're moving those things out of our way from our relationship between us and God. The season to pause and reflect allows us to work to remove those elements. How about if we take some time right now? Not just in the Lenten season, but like in this moment. You guys all have some cards there on your seat. I want to challenge you to do this a little bit different. There's this practice that I've been a part of, this brainstorming practice that I've been a part of in a couple of different settings. And the rule of brainstorming that works is you cannot judge what comes out. No judging. Don't say that's not right. I don't think that matters. It's not good enough. Too many words. It'll take too long. It's not smart enough. It's not good enough. It's not going to make the goal. This week, what I want you to do with this card is I want you to do it for yourself. Nobody's going to read this. You're going to take it with you. But take a second right now and just brainstorm. What could God be talking to me about right now is a thing that's blocking my relationship with God? Just write. No judgment, no thinking. Just put it out on the paper. Take a second. Pause. Breathe. Think. Just put on that paper whatever it is that you think Lent, this season, is drawing you towards. I'm going to put up the lyrics of this next song just for you to think on these lyrics real quick. The song is called No Longer a Slave. In the chorus it says, I am no longer a slave to fear, for I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear, for I am a child of God. I am no longer a slave to fear, for you are a child of God. What is the thing that you've been a slave to? Jot those things down. God, we just give you these things. The elements in our lives that are blocking our relationship with you. The hurry, the stress, the fear, the terror, the things we focus on other than you. The things that bring us that momentary comfort and lifelong pain, God, we just give those to you right now. In preparation for the celebration of you coming into town, being adored, being betrayed, giving your life for us, and then coming back to life for us. Pray that through your blood that we would be healed. Through your resurrection, we would be sanctified and atoned for. God, I pray that you would take everything off of this card, everything in our heart that we just didn't feel that we could write down, everything that's still uncovered inside of us. I pray that you would just take those things, remove them from our lives, so we can just go straight to step 4. We can just reach our hands up to you. So take us, Daddy. Thank you for the fact that we are no longer slaves, but we are your children. Amen.